You're listening to the Rite Retirement Show.
70% of people out there listening to the show today are going to need some level of care. It doesn't necessarily mean that 70% are going to end up in a nursing home, but 70% of people will need some assistance out there. The biggest fear is running out of money for the retiree, but what we see is not enough people spend enough of their money.
Cris prides himself in what matters to you. This is the Rite Retirement Show.
Hi, I'm Luann Fulmer. Welcome to the Rite Retirement Show. I'm here with certified financial planner and financial advisor Cris Wallace, who is president at WG Financial Group. And then also joining us from the firm is Graham Bauer. He's a certified financial planner as well, financial advisor and enrolled agent there at the firm. Both here again today to give us some really good advice about retirement planning. So if you have questions, just listen up because they're going to have the answers for you. Now, here's the phone number. This is how you can reach out to get a complimentary discovery session. All right. 256-937-2010. Call that number or text the word visit, whichever you prefer. Either way, but it is complimentary. Remember, you can always find us on Facebook throughout the week. WG Financial Group 256. Plan, retire, play. That is our motto. And check us out at the website too, wgfinancialgroup.com. Also, remember this show is available on Spotify and Apple. Just search for the Rite Retirement Show and you can catch any show. So look up the subjects that you want to hear, and you can certainly do that. Hey, Cris and Graham, so happy to be here with you today.
Great to be here with you as well, Luann.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to be talking with you again today, Luann.
Yeah. So, one of the first things we do is we start off with real talk, but it's REEL, which are those things you find on social media. So, Graham, tell us what you have for us today.
So me and Cris we're talking a little bit pre-show, and this isn't necessarily a video that we saw, but it very much ties into a lot of the videos that we have talked about seeing prior. This is actually a news story. You may have seen it. It's a NASCAR driver, Kyle Busch, suing an insurance company for alleged deceptive practices. And we'll get into it a little bit more. But essentially, the very short spark notes, and then Cris, I'll let you give your thoughts, are that Kyle Busch was sold into a policy, one of the types of policies that people like to sell on Facebook and Instagram and through those reels that we've talked about many times. And it did not perform the way it was advertised to. He wasn't really made aware of exactly how it worked. And so he's filing a lawsuit. It looks like it may be class action. There may be some other people involved. Against an insurance company about that. So it's interesting because it's kind of like, hey, we've talked a little bit about these types of things before, and now you're seeing a major news story surrounding it.
Yeah, it is. And actually, I think just a little bit more to the story. I don't think it was actually just one policy. I think it was multiple index universal life policies that were really marketed as tax-free retirement plans. And essentially, he lost a lot of money, several millions of dollars.
No.
As a result of these policies kind of failing to deliver. Now, I think I don't want to get ahead of my skis on this type of stuff because there's obviously a lawsuit going on against an insurance company. There's an agent involved. But I heard through the grapevine that the agent didn't do some things that he or she should have done, to help the policy kind of do what it was supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. If you're buying these types of policies, they are not, these index universal life policies are not set it and forget it. Mm-hmm. They do require some management, especially if you're taking money out of them for cash value withdrawals. You have to rerun illustrations. You have to rerun in-force illustrations. So make sure that the policy is still going to last out. You have to pay attention to the cap rates and the internal fees within the within the life insurance policy. So you do, as you buy one of these, you want to make sure you maintain contact with your agent so that he or she can be, managing and helping you manage this thing, because it can get out of control real quick. And it looks like the NASCAR driver, Kyle Busch, is going to have a pretty good lawsuit towards an insurance company, and he's lost a lot of money. Now, a lot of people might say, well, he's still got a lot of money. Well, yeah.
Well, but still, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he's lost a ton of money, and he was, I guess, talked into these types of things. And Graham, we talk about, this is probably the the number one thing that we talk about as on Real Talk, and the videos that we see on social media have to do with these types of policies.
Yeah, it's very common to see, and doing a little reading on it. One thing that they mentioned, and I'm sure there'll be more details as it all comes out, but it's kind of something we've talked about before too, where they realized, and I think they caught this before it was too late, that, however it was set up kind of incorrectly, it was the whole, or at least a few of the policies were set to lapse completely pretty soon before they realized. And I think they were able to keep that from happening. But, they estimated that would have been a $10 million plus dollar loss if that had happened. So, when we see people even that come into the office and have these types of policies, because they're more common than you would think. A lot of times, one of the first things to do is to say, hey, let's, run an in-force illustration. Let's just see, are you at risk of this lapsing? Because if they're set up incorrectly, that can happen. People can lose a lot of, those premiums that they put into it, that cash value that kind of builds up. So they're very complicated. But yeah, I thought it was interesting to see this actually, show up not on just a video that someone makes in their room, but actually like a national news story.
National news,
because Kyle and his wife actually made a video and posted it, and it's all over X right now. I don't know if you have you seen
that video. No, I just saw the news headlines.
Yeah, no, they made a video about it as well, and so I mean, good for them. I mean, good for them for doing that. Bad for them, because this happened, obviously. But you just have to be careful with just life insurance in general. I think the view of life insurance is that, it's just life insurance. It's easy, it's term and whole. And it's not actually. When you get into these universal life policies, they can be rather complex, really, really hard to understand. And Graham was talking about when we have people come in the office and they have these older universal life policies. So these things have been around forever. And so like back in the 1990s, even in the 1980s, when interest rates were really high, these policies were really sold by a lot of insurance agents. And the way that they were sold was you're going to have life insurance, and then you're also going to build cash value within the life insurance policy that'll help you in retirement. Well, the interest rate environment continued to drop. And as we all know, in the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s, interest rates continued to drop, and then they got slammed to zero not too long after that. And what happened with a lot of these policies is that they have a guaranteed minimum interest rate. And what happened was these interest rates went to the guaranteed minimum interest rates for a number of years, which means that the policy did not grow at the rate that the agent told you back in 1982 or 92 that it was going to grow at, because now in the middle 2000s, we're now at the guaranteed minimum interest rate, and the policy is just not performing, and then it's in jeopardy of lapsing. So a lot of times my team, when we sit down with people, they have a trained eye and they know what to look for and what could potentially be a problem long term. And we've seen it time and time again. So really sorry for Kyle Busch, heck of a race car driver. Just got probably mixed up with the wrong insurance person, sounds like.
Well, I'm so happy you brought this to our attention, because you guys have always said, be careful with those. I will say that. I've heard you say that time and time again. And now here you go. Somebody very famous, kind of got suckered into that. So it's very sad that it was set up incorrectly. So thank you for that real talk. Okay. That's REAL. Real talk, right?
Yeah. And this is the Rite Retirement Show, RITE. We just misspell everything.
We do.
Yeah, we're much better at planning than we are spelling, I promise, guys.
There's method to our madness, right? There's method
there is.
to our madness.
We just like to misspell words all day long.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Well, why don't we get into the market and what's going on with that? I always love to hear what you have to say about that, Chris.
Well, the market's still, trucking along pretty good. We've seen a pretty nice pullback with gold as of late. And crypto, Bitcoin is actually dropping considerably, and has dropped considerably as of late. And so like if you own any of the Bitcoin in your portfolio, it's not been pretty to look at in the last month. It's just been kind of on a downward spiral. But all in all, the market's still holding up pretty good. I think it's down a little bit today. We're recording on Tuesday. It's actually down a little bit. And I just wonder I don't know if the market's becoming a little bit antsy because now we're in the 35th day of the shutdown.
Yeah, maybe.
Which is about to be, really the longest shutdown on history or on record. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if investors are becoming a little antsy because of that.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's why you got to have a plan.
You got to have that plan. Yeah, you can't just rely on that market. That's a
Well,
huge risk in retirement.
Well, you just can't. Yeah, you just can't rely on looking at it every day as well.
Or that.
You're
Yeah.
gonna have a pretty stressful retirement if you're staring at your account or the market every single day.
Okay. What about a federal minute?
Federal minute. Yeah. So talking about the government shutdown, obviously there are people that have been without checks since I think it's October 1st. And, that's a long time for some people. If you're a good saver, maybe you have some emergency fund money put back. But I would say there are a lot of people that are living paycheck to paycheck. And now it's starting to hurt people. And what I was reading on FedSmith this past week was that there's been a pretty big increase in loans at the TSP. So more people have, elected to take a loan from their TSP. There's also been a pretty decent number in withdrawals. So there's been a 35% increase in loans, and there's been a 15% increase in withdrawals. So I think what we're seeing is obviously people are needing money and they're resorting to taking from their retirement to be able to make ends meet because they don't have income coming in right now. And additionally, there is a 23% rise in phone calls to the TSP as well from TSP participants relative to this time last year. So we've seen loans, we've seen withdrawals, we've seen upticks in phone calls. This is a little bit ridiculous. Try not to get on a political rant here, but it's just ridiculous that our elected officials that we vote for, I don't care, either party, whatever, that can't get it together.
Right.
And get this thing going again. And it's just very, very frustrating for me to watch because we have a lot of federal employees. I have employees at my office whose spouses are federal employees, and it's annoying.
So annoying.
As of I think as of like an hour ago, this is officially going to be the longest one ever.
Is it?
Because they voted not to, and this is Tuesday, so hopefully by the time this airs, it will be over.
Yeah.
But no, I do agree that it's definitely getting to the point with a lot of people, even people who have saved well, and not necessarily, aren't necessarily going to struggle to buy groceries. It's still a long time to be without a paycheck, to be without, your primary income source. So I know it's definitely putting a lot of pressure on a lot of people because obviously there's a ton of federal employees in Alabama, Northern Alabama, basically everywhere in the U.S., the largest employer.
Right. It's really bad. And I don't think there's any reason to think they're not going to get their back pay, but that doesn't help. That didn't help buy groceries today.
Yeah.
Right. That's the only thing,
But
some people don't. Excuse me. I'm sorry, Chris. But
yeah, they're just putting people in a bad position.
Puts them in a bad position. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, I want to give out our phone number right now. You're listening to the Rite Retirement Show. Here's our phone number. You may call Chris and our team, our awesome team at WG Financial Group for questions that you might have as we get into our topics today. 256-937-2010 is the phone number. Call or text the word visit if you can text or like to text, do it that way. And we're so excited to have you with us today. All right. So now let's get into what you guys kind of proposed to me, what you want to talk about, and that's behavioral biases in retirement and investing.
Yeah, let's get into that. I just felt like that would be a great topic to talk about today because I feel like with the rise in social media and just the internet in general for, the last number of years, everybody has a voice, everybody has an opinion. We all have our biases that we believe in and that we favor towards. And I think it's really important that when you're in retirement that you recognize your blind spots and your biases. Because you're not going to be able to see them in a lot of cases because you're such a strong believer in whatever that you don't see it, that it's a blind spot and may potentially cause you a problem because your belief is so strong. So I think it's really important that you recognize that because retirement just by itself, it's kind of high stakes, right? You're going to retire. Most people have never done this before, done this thing called retirement. And so they're going to go out there, they're going to quit their job, and you don't really have the same chances of recovery that you have when you're working. And I think that it's pretty risky for some people to not really look into this. And then when we talk about biases, Graham, I know you've seen this before. A lot of times they can lead to really poor financial decisions in some cases. And I think, we can talk about several biases that we're going to talk about today on the show. So just if you're listening to the show, just see if any of these resonate with you. Because as I was putting the show notes together, there were some that resonate with me. And, I'm a financial advisor, but guess what? I'm human too, just like everybody else.
That's right.
And so I have my own biases. And the other thing with just not recognizing your biases is they disrupt your planning in a lot of cases. They can mess up your income planning. If you have a recency bias, it may cause a panic sell during a market dip. And then also, biases can affect spousal decisions. They can affect family decisions. And so recognizing your biases and your blind spots, I think can help mitigate some of these things that we're going to talk about today.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay. We're going to go through these and Chris and Graham, you're going to explain, why it's so important to make sure you understand and maybe even pay attention to your own behavior. Okay. All right. Well, let's get started then. Let's get to confirmation bias first.
Yeah. So confirmation bias, I would say, is probably in maybe a historical all-time high, specifically with the rise of the internet, because it's so much easier to find information that affirms your own beliefs on whatever it may be than it ever has been before. So, confirmation bias, for example, would be, let's say you're somebody who, really believes right now. Let's say you're someone who really believes like the stock market is too high, it's overvalued, everything's going to crash soon. And you say, well, that's what I believe. Let me go do some research on it. And you Google, why is the stock market going to crash, in the next month? And then you read a bunch of articles of people who agree with you and you say, well, I must be correct about this. Look at all these people who agree with me. That's kind of the basis of confirmation bias, but we do that in a lot of other ways too. I know that, me and my wife, we agree on a lot of things. And it is very common for me if I feel like I'm...
For now, you do.
For now, yeah.
That'll change, my man.
Not about everything, but like, for example, we have the same favorite restaurant and, there's a restaurant that we love that we go to a lot. And, it's like, sometimes I'll be like, man, this is the best restaurant ever, huh? And she's like, yes. And again, that's another example of confirmation bias. I know that she loves this restaurant like I do. It doesn't really say anything about how good it is that two people that know that they like it are saying it's good. But what this tends to do, and this kind of bleeds into a little bit into one that we'll talk about in a couple minutes, is it tends to get people to this point where they can get way too, stuck in their decisions and stuck in kind of these little echo chambers of thought about this, that, or the other. You definitely saw this a lot a couple years ago and still today, but really heavily in like 2022 about gold, for example. There'd be people who would really like gold. The market wasn't having a good year. There was a lot of inflation, and that wasn't necessarily a bad investment for those people. But there were a lot of people that went really, really, really heavily, and they would watch YouTube videos about it and send us that. And it's like, yes, maybe there's some truth in some of this, but it kind of doesn't allow you to be quite as nuanced because you're only consuming information about people that agree with you to make your decision. So it can lead certainly to mistakes, whether that's, when should you claim your Social Security? How should you invest your money? Should you contribute pre-tax Roth? Any of those types of things. You can find people that agree with you on either side of that aisle. So I think that's just that can be a really easy one to fall into for sure.
Yeah, I'll kind of add to that. How do you think it shows up kind of in retirement? Like how would you think a retiree would, I mean, I think you just gave an example of the gold, right? How a retiree might run into this confirmation bias or, how could they be consumed by it?
I mean, I think that once you're retired, probably one of the top ways that you might fall into this is just like I alluded to before, only consuming, maybe call it more sensationalist media on either side of the news spectrum as far as what's going to happen in the market. So you'll see people who they retire and they kind of get down these YouTube rabbit holes or they get down these TV rabbit holes, Facebook rabbit holes, doesn't really matter, but they end up having really, really, really strong opinions, but they haven't really heard what the other side of people are saying about, about this, that, or the other. There are the people out there, for example, that like love AI tech stocks right now, and there are people that absolutely hate them. And you can find people to agree with you or disagree with you on either side. But I think in retirement, there will be people who, we see this in the office, just kind of get in some of those little echo chambers, and it starts to either really freak them out or build maybe a little bit of an overconfidence, depending on, what it's about.
Yeah, just talking about gold actually for a sec, because you mentioned that. If that was one of your things a couple of years ago, good for you. It's up 117% in the last 2 years. But really, since January of 23, it's up 117%. So, but yeah, that's beside the point. But yeah, you're right. Confirmation bias is that I have this a lot. Actually, I have to really, really watch this for myself, because I think just inherently we want to be right as humans. Most of us want to be right, and we will literally seek out information that tells us we're right, and then we're going to show everybody why we're right. And we see that a lot on social media. You just kind of run into that confirmation bias on social media. The next one we'll kind of move into is loss aversion, and this is really the tendency to prefer avoiding losses rather than acquiring equivalent gains. So this is where you're really afraid of losing, so much so that you're not willing to take any risk at all. And it tends to show up for retirees where you're not really wanting to take any risk, or maybe you're just holding on to an underperforming stock longer or too long because you're afraid of realizing that loss. And, I've said this before, sometimes it's time to move on and part ways with positions, stock positions in some cases. I think people tend to feel like they're married to those positions. They have a particular stock that they really like, and they're like, they're just searching information, going, where's the information that tells me this is going to bounce back, and I'm just going to hang on to it for, forever. And you look at United Healthcare, that would be one that I would think of here in the past several years. It really took a hit in 2025. And those individuals, hanging on to UNH for many, many years, and now it's taken a hit. And what do I do? Do I hang on to it? Now it has bounced back a little bit, but at one point it was down pretty close to 50%, if I'm remembering right. So sometimes it's okay to cut bait from certain positions and move on. So loss aversion would be another one.
Yeah, and that's one that you see with people a lot, because I think we'll run into a lot of people who maybe fall into the category of they have enough income, they don't spend a whole lot, and they have a good base of assets, and they really maybe could be a little bit more aggressive with their money, because even though maybe they're retired, pre-retiree, their money is a little bit longer term because they don't really touch a whole lot of it. They don't really expect to spend a whole lot of it. So they could have a longer term outlook. But that fear of losing money kind of trumps the joy of growing your money, because there's always that, always that risk reward trade-off. So it is interesting, but I understand how people get to that point. And, I'm at this point in life, I'm not really there quite so much, but I know that when you get later into life, especially when you get into those retirement years, it can be one common thing we hear a lot is I saved all this money and I just really don't want to lose it. This is my nest egg. This is what I saved.
I think it's okay to lose money in retirement. It's not okay to lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's kind of the way I like to say it.
Right.
You're going to have some losses. If you're invested in the stock market, you're going to have some losses. I think that's where diversification comes in, and just remembering it is okay to lose money. And, realistically, if you only realize the loss when you sell. So if we just kind of keep those couple things in mind, I think it'll be all right.
Very good. Okay. Do you want to get to the overconfidence bias?
Overconfidence.
Overconfidence.
Yeah, this is where somebody might overestimate their own knowledge and ability to kind of predict market movements. And I've seen this a lot with people. It's one of the reasons that I do not personally manage my own portfolio, because they're, a certified financial planner. And sometimes I get overconfident. I think things are going to happen. Maybe I'll predict this, and more often than not, I'm not right at picking stocks. And I would say that the vast majority of people out there are not really good stock pickers. So I tend to work with a more diversified portfolio. But this is common. We see that a lot, and it shows up in the retirement area because investors might trade a little bit more frequently, or they may dismiss professional advice because they have their own research, because that's the common thing. That's the common thing today that we hear is I'm gonna do my own research. I'm gonna do my own research. I mean, you've heard that a lot, right?
Yeah. Which for, I feel like most people nowadays, it consists of typing in, should I do this Reddit, and then hitting,
Yeah.
return, or should I do this
Yeah.
and on a Facebook group or something like that.
Yeah. It really started to come about with like COVID, I think.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. But now it's like, I'm going to do my own research.
And then you guys, we have AI, right? I mean, people can just go online and ask the computer the question.
Well, you can.
You know?
And you got to be careful with that too, because I think AI has a bias to it.
I think so.
As well. And I also think it's wrong sometimes. It just gives you bad information, and then you correct it and say, hey, that's not correct. And then it's like, oh, thank you very much for pointing that out. And it's like, hey, wait a minute. Like, you're supposed to know this kind of stuff.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So you got to be careful with that kind of stuff out there. But let's talk about anchoring bias.
Okay.
So anchoring is just relying too heavily on the first piece of information that you encounter when making decisions. So we talked about hanging on to a position. You can really become anchored in that position. A retiree might fixate on something that happened in the past, and really just anchor in on that and not be able to move and make decisions. So I don't know. You just have to be careful of that. Because that can cause you to, again, make bad decisions. Again, maybe hang on to a stock that you should have cut bait and moved on from because you think it's going to come back. So I'm just going to sit on it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's, kind of, as we've gone through these, the overconfidence, the anchoring, and the confirmation bias, I think those all three kind of go hand in hand. Like, a lot of times confirmation bias leads to a little bit of overconfidence, and, same with anchoring in a lot of senses. If you're just really confident, one thing that people have probably anchored to a little bit was like low interest rates, because we had low interest rates for a long time, and they went a bit higher, and there's a lot of people that are like, well, maybe I'm just not going to do this, that, or the other, not going to buy a house until they come back down.
Right.
So, well, they got to come back down. They have for a while.
Good luck for that. Good luck with that. Yeah.
And they are coming down a little bit, but it just goes back to maybe more like indecision due to, focusing on maybe not totally relevant information. But I do think that all of it kind of routes back to ending up with you maybe being just a little bit overconfident in your, in your predictions a lot of times.
Yeah. One other one as we get near the end of the first half of the show here is herd mentality. And that's just the tendency to follow the larger group. So what are people online doing? What am I reading in headlines? Something that might be trendy, so that, for a retiree, one of the things we heard when crypto started taking off was, should I do my money in crypto? Well, I mean, if you'd had a lot of money in crypto, you'd be losing a lot of money here over the last month, because it's really, taking a step back. But, doing those things that are trendy, doing that herd mentality can get you in trouble. So you just want to be careful. Like we said when we first started this segment here, was recognize your blind spots in retirement, understand where they are, understand your biases, build a plan so that you're not relying on, reading the newspaper or reading Reddit threads. I notice you say Reddit a lot. You and my son read a lot on Reddit. So, but anyway, yeah, just build out the plan so you're not relying on that kind of stuff, and you can kind of relax and get into retirement and kind of enjoy life. So if you're catching this first episode or first half of the episode on the way to church, you can hop out to Apple or Spotify and then catch the whole show. This is obviously the 30-minute version. We'd encourage you to hop out to Apple and Spotify to catch that whole version.
Market fluctuations can be unsettling, but a resilient plan can help maintain stability. Discuss how you might fortify your retirement strategy with Cris Wallace. Text VISIT to 256-937-2010 today to begin. Remember, text VISIT to 256-937-2010.
Are you a federal employee feeling pressure from the early retirement offers like VERA, VSIP, or the Deferred Resignation Program? Recent government initiatives have introduced significant changes to federal retirement programs, making employees feel pressured to consider early retirement or face potential layoffs. At WG Financial Group, we help guide federal employees through these uncertain times. Our team understands the complex federal retirement systems and can help you make informed decisions. Call 256-937-2010 to schedule your complimentary discovery session with us today. We'll help you assess your options and create a personalized retirement plan to help you feel more confident. Visit WGFinancialGroup.com or call 256-937-2010 to book your session. Firm is not affiliated with the U.S. government. Investment advisory services offered through AE Wealth Management, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.
If lingering doubts like, have I saved enough? Or will my retirement funds endure? Are on your mind, it's time to consult with Cris Wallace. Text VISIT to 256-937-2010. That's 256-937-2010 to book your appointment and get the answers you need.
This is the Rite Retirement Show. So happy to have you along with us today. I am Luann Fulmer here with my friends Cris Wallace and Graham Bauer. Both are certified financial planners at WG Financial Group. Cris is president there, and of course, also financial advisor too, and Graham Bauer too, financial advisor and enrolled agent at the firm. At WG Financial Group, they do the Rite Retirement process. You're going to hear us talk about that. We take you through this process that includes everything from, income planning to investments, tax strategies, and estate planning. So we would love to help you out. If you have questions, they have the answers for you. They've been doing this for a long time. They work with retirees. They would love to guide you. So again, our phone number, 256-937-2010. You may call or text the word visit. And I also want to just mention here that you guys do lunch and learns. And Cris, about a week ago, you were not available because you were doing a lunch and learn. So talk about that just for a moment.
Yeah, so I was invited by a local business just to come out, talk about retirement planning. And the audience that I had actually they were kind of all ages. So I just kind of built out a little simple presentation that I could kind of talk about retirement planning through the years. So we talked about like 20s and 30s, 30s and 40s and beyond, getting ready for retirement. And basically they had lunch, which I didn't have to provide lunch. They provided lunch. So that was kind of nice.
Sometimes you do, right?
Yeah, we would, of course, for sure. But it's kind of nice to eat. So I got to eat and do a little talking. It was a good day, So yeah, just talked about retirement planning, kind of how to prep for retirement as you're saving up for that. And yeah, that's what we do. We'll come into your business and really try to cater the conversation around what your employees need to hear, what they need to know about. And we just do that for about an hour, lunch and learn.
You can schedule that. All you have to do is call this number, same number, 256-937-2010, and arrange this opportunity for Cris to come out and meet with your employees. Okay, it's complimentary, 256-937-2010. It's the Lunch and Learn. And again, thank you for tuning in today. You're listening to the Rite Retirement Show. I'm Luann Fulmer here with my friends Graham and Cris. And okay, so why don't we get into, if you want to, just for a little bit, the cost of living adjustment that just came out a couple weeks ago, 2.86. They try to help retirees with inflation. Is that enough, or does it ever really help entirely?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
So, is it enough? No. I mean, short answer to that question is no. But it's better than nothing. I mean, there are people out there today that have pensions that don't have any COLA adjustment on them. And they, obviously miss having those COLAs. The thing that we have to think about with the Social Security COLA is that's based upon really a basket of goods. It's not including the health care. And the retirees, one of the most expensive thing a retiree's got to deal with outside of taxes is going to be their health care costs. And so with health care, inflating at really double, more than double what the normal basket of goods is, kind of eats up that 2.8% inflationary number that's going to be given out, which, by the way, on an average, it ends up being somewhere around $56 for the average retiree on monthly benefit.
Okay. That's what it comes out to. Really? $56 extra dollars.
Enough to buy,
I don't know.
Maybe you and Bobby can go out to eat on $56
one time.
Without tip and tax.
No drinks.
Yeah, no drinks. Yeah. Okay. Well,
water.
yeah. Talk about not much help, but hey, whatever they have to do. So that's the scary thing. Some people do rely completely on Social Security. If Social Security is not enough, Graham, what can retirees do to make up that difference?
Well, I think that, as you go through retirement, the good news is two things are usually happening. On the one hand, inflation is happening, and those cost of living adjustments that may not always be enough, but they are happening on your Social Security at least. And then as you kind of get towards the back end, you a lot of times end up spending a little bit less. So even though some things might inflate more, your healthcare cost goes up. Over time, your spending tends to go down. But if you are, somebody who's worried about, what if early on I get 2-3 years in and inflation is kind of taken off and, my income isn't keeping up. Well, then at that point, you really do have to make sure that you have enough savings to where you can have a withdrawal strategy to be building kind of that other income source. So for a lot of people, they'll have their Social Security, but on top of that, they'll have some kind of, reoccurring distribution from their accounts as well to kind of supplement their income source. There's also people that will do part-time work, and some people have pensions. So there's other sources that people do have, but most commonly you're going to have, your Social Security, and you're going to have some withdrawals. So I think the person who probably faces the largest amount of risk of, inflation outpacing your expenses is somebody who has Social Security income, but doesn't really have anything else saved. Because at that point, if Social Security goes up, if inflation goes up and your Social Security isn't really keeping up, there's really nothing you can do other than working to supplement. And, unless someone states that they explicitly want to do it, we really don't plan for anybody to be working in retirement. So if you're retired, you should be retired, unless you want to do something part-time that's like fun. But for most people, our goal is if we build a retirement plan, you're going to be retired. You're not going to be working. You're not going to be retired to 34 hours a week instead of 40. And so I think that's important too, to make sure, before you go into it that, I'm going to be able to have a good withdrawal strategy that I know, hey, even if inflation does tick up a little bit, I'm going to be able to supplement my income, not going to have to step down in lifestyle.
Yeah.
I think also we were talking about loss aversion in the first segment, and this is why you have to invest in retirement, because you have to be able to offset some of this, cost of living that's going up. And one of the ways you can do that is by investing and growing your money and growing your assets. Now, that doesn't mean that you got to take all kinds of risk, but I do feel very strongly that retirees need to still have their money in a position where it can earn revenue or earn earnings to turn into income or withdrawals that you can take out of it. And I think one of the messages that I hear far too often in retirement from other advisors that are out there today is you can't lose money. Like you don't want to lose money. You can't lose money. And what if the market drops? And it's like, well, just build a plan so that the plan is fine. Maybe you're using a bucket strategy, to pull out of while the market is down or something along those lines. But you have to have your money in a position where it's going to outpace inflation, because these little adjustments that you get to your federal pension, your military pension, or to Social Security, that ain't going to cut it. That's not going to keep up with healthcare. So again, I don't want to get off too much on a tangent, but I see, just insurance only professionals running around out there just touting, you can't lose money. You can't lose money. And I disagree. Like I said earlier, I think you can lose money. You just can't lose a lot of money in retirement. And then also you got to build your plan where you don't have to sell a depressed asset.
Very good. Yeah. Now, one strategy we often hear about Social Security is to delay those benefits. Cris, why don't you take us through how that works, please?
Yeah. So we are obviously real big advocates of a data-driven Social Security decision. Long time ago, when we started the show, nearly 10 years ago at this point, we started talking about waiting on Social Security. And one of the main reasons was for spousal protection reasons, and then also for tax reasons. And so a lot of people, typically engineers, will get out the spreadsheet, they'll look at the break even and say that I'm not going to wait on Social Security because I got to live to age 80 or whatever the age is before I break even. And Graham said it best many months ago. He said a lot of retirees treat it like a game. So We like to look at Social Security as the really one of those foundational pieces of income. Even within our process, it is one of those foundational pieces of income. It's very tax efficient in that at worst case scenario, only 85% of it is subject to federal taxation here in Alabama and Tennessee. And so that means 15% of it is for free. Now, there's not another investment vehicle that anybody has out there where you get 15% of it for free. Your IRA doesn't allow that. And sure, there's withdrawal strategies where you can take out of IRAs without having to pay federal tax, depending on what your total income is. But by and large, when you just look at Social Security, it's very tax efficient. And if you wait on it, then, obviously it gets a guaranteed percentage as you continue to wait. So once you reach the age of 62, between 62 and 67, and we've said this a number of times on the show, it's somewhere between a 5 and 6% rate of return every year that your benefit grows by once you turn 62. When you hit 62, you also have the COLA on top of that. So not only do you have, say, 5.5% growth, now if there's a 2.8% COLA, now it's your benefits growing by like 7.8% that year. So you're getting that COLA even though you're not collecting. You're also getting the growth. When you reach your full retirement age, and we'll just use 67 as FRA for this situation. Once you reach that full retirement age, now it grows at 8% a year through age 70. So not only do you get the 8% a year, you also get the COLA. So in a year like this year where they're going to, give a 2.8% COLA, your Social Security benefit would grow by 10.8% at that point. So waiting on that Social Security from a tax perspective, from a spousal protection perspective, and then also just from a growth perspective. And I've heard somebody the other week said to me, and I know where they heard this from. They heard it from another radio program.
Oh, yeah.
They said, well, what if I take that money at 62 and I invest it? I'm going to make more money, aren't I? And I said, okay, well, let's just get in the DeLorean time machine, go back in time a little bit. Mm-hmm. And let's not go too far back. Let's just go back to 2022 when Joe Biden was in office. And you're going to retire in January of 2022, and you're going to start your Social Security, and you're going to take those monthly checks, and you are going to invest them in the market. And right out of the gate, you're down 20% because the market itself was down around 20% in 22. Uh-huh. So you tell me, is it guaranteed, or are you taking a chance there? And in my eyes, that's a chance. So get again back to the guarantees. If I can get something for guaranteed, I'm going to lean that way for my retirees all day long.
All right. So if you guys have questions, Chris and Graham and the team at WG Financial Group can guide you if you have questions about Social Security or anything regarding retirement. Here's the phone number, 256-937-2010. Reach out for a complimentary discovery visit. Call or text the word visit to this number, 256-937-2010. Remember, our Facebook, too, is WG Financial Group 256. If you're just joining us, we're talking about the 2026 cost of living adjustment with Social Security and what retirees can do to, better keep up with inflation, because it's not a lot. Chris says it's about $56 a month, so not a huge uptick. But Graham, what about retirees who are already collecting Social Security? Is there anything that they can do to improve their financial situation?
Yeah, there definitely is. I mean, if you, I guess I'll start with, if you collected early and you're listening to the show and it was within the last year, it's not technically too late. You can resuspend and defer. If that
pay it all back.
Yeah, you just got to pay it all back. So not a lot of people do that, but it is an option for you. So if this is somehow over, the last 8-10 years, however long been on air, this is the first time you've ever tuned in and you're like, oh my gosh, I should have delayed. If you're within 12 months, you still technically could, if you were able to pay that back. But for the average person, if you're already collecting, I think I'll just take the example of someone who's like, say you're retired, you're 62, and you're already collecting, you collected early. At that point, even though maybe we don't agree with the decision to collect early, depending on your situation, what I would really be looking at is, what can I do to set myself up from a tax perspective later on in retirement? Because as we've kind of talked about, your Social Security and inflation adjustments probably won't keep up with inflation exactly over the course of your lifetime. So you're going to have to tap into some other funds. So maybe today you're getting, a couple thousand a month from Social Security and you're living on that and a little bit of savings. Well, there's probably a gap where you could maybe do some Roth conversions in a very low or 0% tax bracket. While tax brackets are currently low, while your income is currently low, you don't have any RMDs due right now, most likely. Well, if you're 62, definitely not. So I think that's an interesting thing to look at, to say, hey, can I set myself up later, even though I can't, make my Social Security higher anymore? What I can do is give myself more post-tax income by, maybe either paying a little bit of the taxes today or even doing some conversions without paying any taxes if that is your own Social Security being your only income source. So there are still some things you can do from an efficiency standpoint to try and set yourself up a little bit better over time. I've referenced my grandpa many times on the show, but I believe he collected his Social Security at 62 and he lived till 87, 88. And, in his lifetime, that was enough for him. He also had a pension and things like that. So that helps as well. But it doesn't necessarily mean your retirement is completely ruined because you made maybe a bad decision on Social Security or just a rash decision. But like I said, the other things that you can do to help yourself out at that point is really more where your headspace should be at from that point on.
Okay, very good. Now, obviously in retirement, rising costs, that's inflation, especially in healthcare, right? So that's a huge concern for retirees. We always talk about that risk, Chris. Go over again, because this is what we talk about. How can planning help address these challenges we're going to have with healthcare?
Well, healthcare's, it's wild, because I was just thinking about the federal government employee who, I think we saw a number out there that their healthcare is expected to jump up probably close to 10% or more than 10%, which is just crazy. I know that in the planning software that we use for our retirees, the average cost it pulls in from, I think it's the Medicare, Medicaid and Medicare Services Division pulls it in. It has it adjusting somewhere around 5.6%. So to think about like the federal government employees and their healthcare going up by more than 10%, it's just amazing to really to think about that, because that is going to eventually become one of the largest line items in your budget when you think about it. So let's just stay to the tune of the federal employee right here. If they retire and they keep their healthcare, their Blue Cross Blue Shield is going to be somewhere probably between 16 and 20% of their pension. So they may get X number of dollars and their healthcare is going to be about 16 to 20%. But by the age of 80, if it continues to inflate at roughly 5.6%, it quickly becomes 30 to 40% of their pension cost at that point. So now your healthcare is just eating up all of your, part of your pension there, a good portion of your pension. And that is including if your pension continues to get the 2.4% on average, which is what the federal employees seen over the last 10 years. The healthcare just continues to eat that up. So here's kind of what we think individuals and families should take a look at doing. One, it's open enrollment right now. And so I think it's time for, families that are in retirement just to make sure that they have the best healthcare plan for their family. With Medicare Advantage plans and Part D prescription plans, you can adjust those or change those during open enrollment. So I always encourage families to do that. Also, if you have a Medicare supplement, you can actually change that at any time during the year. You don't have to wait until open enrollment. So there are times when your Medicare supplemental premium may see a price increase or a rate increase. And so once it goes through 2 or 3 of those, I'm telling my retirees that I work with, hey, it's time to requote that. If you're a federal employee and you've taken Blue Cross Blue Shield with you into retirement, I know that insurance is great. I know that that's what you've had all of your life. But as a federal employee, you have the ability to suspend your health care that you have with the federal government, and then you can implement some other type of plan. And so what I'm saying here is that you may have the ability to purchase a Medicare supplement on the outside and suspend your federal Blue Cross Blue Shield and then purchase supplement that might be a little bit cheaper. The message here is that I think retirees have to figure out ways to find cheaper healthcare. And that means looking at the different options that are out there. I believe that means working with an advisor that has access to some of this stuff to help them out. and really the knowledge to kind of help them walk through it so that they don't make any mistakes on it. Healthcare has just gone crazy. I mean, mine has gone up as well. Of course, I'm not on Medicare, but just in general, it's gone up quite a bit. So I think just kind of looking around out there for different plans is worth it for most families.
Yeah, and I just, to add one thing, because I completely agree with that. I think sometimes we think about like less expensive or cheap equaling bad. And when we talk about more cost-efficient ways to do healthcare, we're not talking about the cheapest possible healthcare you can find, because you still want a good health insurance plan. So there are some very cheap health insurance options in retirement that might not be good for everybody, that are going to be more restrictive. So I think it's about finding the balance. And that's kind of what you were alluding to, Chris, where you want to get the best, the value for your money out of the healthcare, because of the fact that, it does obviously inflate so much over the years, similar to a lot of insurances, similar to how your home and auto insurance, is going to inflate over the years. And, it's always a good idea to shop that around too. So I think it's just about being creative and trying to really just not necessarily just say, what's the cheapest health care I can get, but can I save money and still have really good health insurance?
Yeah. And when we talk about, I'm glad you actually brought that up. It's not cheap. With Medicare supplements, they pay for a lot of stuff. I mean, they pay for a lot of stuff, and your out of pocket per year is really low. Your copays, if you have the in plan, you have copays, they're really low. I just think it makes sense to look at it. I really, really do, especially as these increases continue to happen. So like if you're with the federal government, you're paying the basic plan cost there plus Medicare. And in some cases that for a couple, just for the Blue Cross Blue Shield, you're over $600 a month for that payment. And I mean, $200 or $300 potential savings sitting right there on the table just for looking around. But what happens is I think people get comfortable with what they have and they don't want to change, because it's like your home and auto insurance. I've been with company X for 30 years. Oh, Chris, they've been nice to me and they've been good to my family and I don't want to change. Like, okay, I get it. You're being overcharged. Like, do you want to be friends, or do you want to have more money in a time where, things are tighter? Inflation is still, year over year at 3%. It just, do you want to save money or not? And it's sort of like when we're building a financial plan and we show an option to somebody that might be a tax efficient strategy. And I don't know if we want to do it. I'm not really comfortable then. Okay, all right, well, you want to pay the IRS more tax money? That's okay too. I'm just here to show you what the options are and show you some strategies. If you're a retiree and healthcare is running away on you, you need to look at it, because believe it or not, there are ways to save money when it comes to healthcare and retirement.
So for anybody who's listening today and they feel kind of overwhelmed by all of this, tell them what would be the most important thing they could do right now.
Well, one of the things I wouldn't recommend, so I'll start off by saying this. I think that people listen to the show, and Graham, I'd be interested to get your take on this as well. I think they listen to the show and they go, I'm doing everything that Chris and Graham talks about on the show. And they'll look at their wife and they'll say, we're good, honey. Like, I'm doing everything they're saying. I'm good. And I can't tell you how many times somebody's come into the office and they've been a long time listener, like 8 years, and they're not doing everything that we talk about, not even close. And I'm not making fun. I'm just saying that I think you hear things and you think you're doing all the things, but you're not. And, on the air, it's hard to get into the nooks and crannies of the financial planning meetings that we do. So I think on the radio, we talk about more big picture, but would you kind of say that's?
Yeah, I think 100%. I mean, there's a lot of things like that in our lives. I go to church every Sunday and listen to the sermon, and I'm by no means comparing us to pastors, but I know what I should be doing, but that doesn't mean that I'm always doing it.
Right.
So there's both sometimes the knowledge gap, but then there's also just the motivation to do all of it gap. I mean, I would say that for a lot of people, they could probably figure out a lot of answers if they were really just hardcore consuming all the good content that there is out in the world, but most people don't have A, the time to do that, and B, really the willpower to, follow through with all of it as well.
I would also say this. I'm married. So, we talked about, what'd you say? Your wife agrees with you?
We don't agree on everything,
They almost
but
do.
I would say we agree on a lot of the smallest things, like our favorite restaurants and movies and music and stuff. And more what I was alluding to.
The gap will get wider as we go on. And
no kids yet. So
yeah, right. That's when it gets really bad. I think there's listeners out there today, and I'm just going to say it bluntly. Your spouse does not fully trust you, believe it or not. And I say that because my wife, for the longest time, didn't trust me when it came to these types of decisions. And I'm not ashamed to admit it. I did not, and I've talked about this on the show before. I made some really bad financial decisions early in life, credit card debt, you name it. But now the trust is there. I teach this stuff. She hears me talk about it. She's heard meetings that I've done. She's watched TV shows. She looks at her own finances and she's like, Chris knows, kind of knows what he's doing. I trust him. But there are still areas that she doesn't trust me. And that's where she calls, her dad. so kind of get some insight there from Grampy, as we call it. So what I would say to you, if you're feeling overwhelmed or if you think you're doing everything right, go meet with a financial professional. It don't have to be us, man. If it's not us, it's fine. I mean, we have a very seasoned business and we're not like, begging for people to come in. That we want people to come in when they're ready, when they're looking for a relationship, looking for help, but start by meeting with a financial professional and review your plan. Look for the gaps, identify those blind spots, identify those biases that you have, and start working on a way to create a strategy to help maximize your income in retirement, reduce your tax exposure, manage the rising costs that are going to be out there. We didn't even talk about long-term care, Luann. That's a whole nother.
Right. Yeah.
We should probably just do a whole show. Matter of fact, I think we'll do that in the near future. We'll do a show just on long-term care, but working with that financial professional to really give you that confidence that you're on the right track and that, your retirement is important. And it's so important that you don't want to leave it to chance. And what I would say to you, I'll kind of leave this as a parting thought today. If you have a spouse and you cannot go home and look your spouse right in the face and say, honey, I have the most tax efficient strategy for my retirement, our retirement rather, because it ain't yours, it's ours. If you cannot go home and look your spouse in the face and say, honey, I have the most tax efficient strategy for my retirement. I know exactly what I'm going to do. I know exactly how and where and how much I'm going to pull out of my retirement portfolio to minimize our taxation. And honey, most of all, you're going to be okay. If I pass away, here's the plan. And pull out your plan and show them the plan that you've developed to let them know that you're going to be okay. And that plan will include your income, your tax efficient strategy, how you're going to mitigate risk, and your estate portion, which is when you pass away, that they're going to be okay. If you can't look your spouse in the face and say all of that with confidence, then you need to talk to somebody. And we're here if you want to talk to us, 256-937-2010. Our number again is 256-937-2010. If you don't call us, call somebody, but you need to talk to a financial professional that understands retirement, understands how to get around in retirement, to give you and your family that confidence that you're going to need to live the life that you really always dreamed of. 256-937-2010. Hope everybody has an awesome and blessed week. And remember to serve every person and every situation with a servant heart.
Neither AEWM nor advisors providing investment advisory services through AEWM recommend or facilitate the buying or selling of precious metals.
Graham Bauer holds the enrolled agent designation, but is not currently offering tax preparation services. Neither the firm nor its agents may give tax advice. Individuals should consult with a qualified professional for guidance before making any purchasing decisions.
Investment advisory services made available through AE Wealth Management LLC, AEWM. AEWM and WG Financial Group are not affiliated companies. Insurance products are offered through the insurance business WG Insurance Services. WG Financial Group is an investment advisory practice that offers products and services through AE Wealth Management LLC, AEWM, a registered investment advisor. AEWM does not offer insurance products. The insurance products offered by WG Insurance Services are not subject to investment advisory requirements. AEWM and WG Financial Group are not affiliated companies. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. WG Financial is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. Information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by WG Financial. This radio show is a paid placement.